Alright, hello everyone and welcome to AEW Discussion. I'm your host at AEW Enthusiast Dougie Doug. In today's episode I'm going to be discussing Dynamite, February 15, 2023 episode. So AEW continues its march to Revolution, and it had a jam-packed lineup for this episode of Dynamite, featuring a Texas Tornado Tag Team title match, and also a triple threat match that was originally scheduled several weeks back, but had to be changed up due to an injury. Now it was back with all three originally scheduled participants, and with that, we'll go ahead and get right into the action. Starting with the Texas Tornado match, it was Jon Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli versus Preston Vance and Roosh. So this match was a fun and energetic contest. Vance and Roosh looked good here. There was a fun spot where they were unified enough Jose to keep things fair, and the good guys won over. Relatively related to Roosh and Vance barricaded Danielson in the locker room last week. This was a suitable use of Moxley and Castagnoli, while giving the underutilized Roosh and Vance something of note to do. Now Moxley has a road, he had an obvious path to Revolution. He now has a match at Revolution. We'll get to that. Actually, no, we will. We'll talk about that one in a second. And given that Moxley had an obvious path to Revolution, perhaps this would have been better utilized to set something up for the other three involved. Perhaps, nonetheless, later on in the show, Moxley or Hangman would challenge Moxley to a match at Revolution. Moxley would accept, and then added a stipulation of Texas Deathmatch. So, there's going to be some blood involved in that one, so it's going to be a bloody good match right there. Probably a good way to wrap up the feud between their two. It's gotten a bit personal. They hit each other hard. It makes sense to wrap it up in this manner as well, too. So, yes, Moxley and Page now have their match set for Revolution. It is official. And then MJF was contractually obligated to appear, and he did just that. And this might be redundant, but MJF is great as the bad guy with the inferiority complex that has to hide behind bravado while paying people to speak about his greatness. He's one of the best talkers in the industry, and as good a bad guy as there is in wrestling right now. He is a great foil for a guy like Danielson, who will probably always be loved by fans and appreciated just because of just how good he is. I love and appreciate him. His performance against MJF will not only be one of his highest profile matches to date in AEW, but will go a long way in setting the tone, this will be one of MJF's highest profile matches in quite some time in AEW, and it will go a long way in setting the tone for his championship reign. It's also, I think, probably the highest profile match Danielson has had in AEW to this point as well, too. I think the last big match he had, when was the last? Was it the one with Omega? Can't be that. Can't have been that long, could it? Or maybe it is. Either way, also, Christopher Daniels made an appearance in this segment as well, too, and they have tried to pay him to talk bad about Danielson. That did not work, and using Christopher Daniels in a situation like this, and maybe even setting up a match between him and MJF, solid booking decision that makes use of a guy who still has plenty to offer to AEW, even if he is semi-retired. So, overall great segment right there. The build continues on to the match. Jungle Boy, Jack Perry versus Brian Cage. And Perry, he's certainly an interesting case, as it often feels like or looks like Tony Khan has the intention to push him, but doesn't necessarily know what he's pushing him towards. You think about recently the pairing of Hook, Jungle Hook, well, that ended up in 2 matches. And since him and Luchasaurus split and they had their feud, that feud was like, I guess, a bad substitute for the Christian Cage and Jungle Boy feud being cancelled because Christian Cage had an injury. Pretty much, I think since then, you could argue he's been floating around aimlessly, with his latest run dedicated to winning an individual championship, hence why Jungle Hook kind of got ended. But now Christian Cage is back, 100, and appears 100% ready to go, so expect that match to be made official for Revolution. Hopefully Luchasaurus doesn't get involved, because that would hurt things more than would benefit him. And now that Cage is also back, it seems that he's going to derail the story in order to go backwards to the story originally between Cage and Perry that never really had a proper conclusion. So it's not that it's a bad decision. I completely understand that this match was supposed to happen, and now it can finally happen. So, hopefully Perry can use the feud with Cage to propel him to the next level, as one would have to imagine that was the intention in the first place. So it's good that AEW remembered this feud and went back to it, and I just want to see what comes of it. Then the main event, triple threat match, Ruby Soho versus Dr. Britt Baker, DMD versus Toni Storm. Now this wasn't announced as a number one contenders match, but it felt like a number one contenders match. Perhaps Ruby Soho is setting herself up to be the next challenger for the AEW Women's World Title. She doesn't really seem interested in picking sides. She seems interested in the title, but I guess in her pursuit of the title, that would put her on the opposite side of Jamie Hayter. So even though she seems not interested in picking a side, seems like already been chosen for her. Because after the match, Soho would pick up the win. And it's great to see her pick up another win on television. She's been in AEW for quite some time and has looked like a talent who was over and really good in the ring, but could not secure consistent victories in order to build momentum. She now has built some momentum for herself, and the question becomes whether there is any room for growth, or if she is a creative pawn in the story between Baker and Saraya. That there still is, the overall story still seems centered around those two, and if Soho is challenging Hayter for that title, then you can't let that story overshadow what's going on with Hayter. Yeah, so if there is a women's title match between Hayter and Soho, what's going on between Saraya and Baker cannot overshadow. That's simply what I'm trying to say. So I guess we'll have to see what comes out of this. I'd imagine AEW is probably trying to use this feud to set up something for Revolution, perhaps. Wouldn't surprise me if it was, but the question is it a multi-woman? Is it a match? Is it a tag team match? Or is there going to be a women's? Or is Jamie Hayter going to be defending her title in a singles match? What comes out of it, I guess we'll have to see how it all continues to unravel. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode of AEW Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button down below.